So, good morning, or good afternoon, or good night, I guess, depending on what time zone you're in today. So, we got some interesting stories for you guys today, and as a special treat, we have a debate for you at the end because sometimes we don't agree, and that happens sometimes. So, that'll be interesting. Um, that's what's so good about independence. We have our own minds, and we don't march in line like some people do.
Well,
I will.
as we were preparing these stories, yeah, it'll be a little bit of a debate, but it's not so much. I see your point of view also. I just think that there are a lot of logistical issues to unwrap regarding what is the intent of that conversation we're going to go into at the end. So we'll let the see also if some of our viewers can contribute their thoughts in the live chat.
Absolutely. We'll love to hear from you, and maybe we'll put a poll in at the end to see what you guys think. But we're not going to reveal that story yet. So the first story is really interesting. Pelosi went to Taiwan against the president's wishes, against military advisors' wishes, against any kind of common sense as a trade delegate. But she did have the support. Don't worry, she had some support. She had support from 25 GOP senators, including Mitch McConnell. So let's not forget, Mitch McConnell approves of this visit, so it's okay.
They're as thick as thieves over there. And I want to also note that when President Trump contacted or made a phone call to the president of Taiwan during his administration, Democrats lost their, but there are a lot of Democrats this time around as Nancy decides to go potentially spark an international incident that are suddenly supportive of her, along with those Republicans, because the majority of Democrats are Republicans in Democrats' clothing. It's two heads of the same ugly serpent, the Republicans and the Democrats right now. And while she claims she's over there to promote freedom in her garbled word salad public speaking, everybody knows that this was about protecting corporate interests, basically trying to bridge the alliances with Taiwan regarding this new chip bill, of which she and her husband are also still invested in, even though they sold all their NVIDIA stock. They still have puts, or they've got some kind of financial interest in how that's all going to play out with the United States supplementing chip companies here that will have to do business with companies providing supplies from Taiwan. So this is all at the risk of sparking a response from China, from Beijing against Taiwan, because China still considers Taiwan Chinese territory. Remember, Taiwan was formed when the aristocrats from China migrated to Taiwan after the communists took over mainland China. So they consider Taiwan as much Chinese territory as the Russians consider Ukraine their territory, which sparked that whole conflict. So what Nancy's managed to do here is just stir up a hornet's nest without any regard for the long-term ramifications that the rest of the world is looking at. And her arrogance, her sense of entitlement, in light of how military advisor said this isn't a good idea, how Joe Biden didn't support it, but then he said he can't control what she does because Congress is a separate part of our government. It's just all bullshit is what it is, because she's got a lot of power. The reason Nancy's got a lot of power is because she's one of the probably main and leading fundraisers for the Democratic Party. So she's got carte blanche to do whatever the fuck she wants, even at the risk of sparking in this international incident, which we're now kind of embroiled in, especially after this story. Sorry, Shane, I didn't want to filibuster here, but that this precedes the story. Are you able to share this screen, or am I able to click it open? Okay.
Let's put that in here.
Because this is the after effects of what happened with her visit. She comes back. This is reported today by AP News. Pelosi, China cannot isolate Taiwan by preventing visits. The Wicked Witch of the West claims. This comes from AP Tokyo. China will not be able to isolate Taiwan by preventing U.S. officials from traveling there. U.S. House Speaker, she can't even speak. Nancy Pelosi said Friday in Tokyo as she wrapped up an Asia tour highlighted by a visit to Taipei that infuriated Beijing. Beijing has tried to isolate Taiwan, including by preventing the self-governing island from joining the World Health Organization, Pelosi said. They may try to keep Taiwan from visiting or participating in other places, but they will not isolate Taiwan by preventing us to travel there, she said, defending her trip that has escalated tensions in the region. Pelosi said her visit to Taiwan was not intended to change the status quo for the island, but to maintain peace in the Taiwan Strait, which separates Taiwan and mainland China. She praised Taiwan's hard-fought democracy and success in technology and business, while criticizing Chinese violations of trade agreements, weapons proliferation, and human rights problems, including its treatment of its Muslim Uyghur minority. Look, I can agree on all of these human rights violations that should not be tolerated, but that's all smokescreen for what she's actually over there for. Okay, she props the human rights issues up that she doesn't give a shit about to protect business interests with Taiwan, as well as adding to the legacy of her service before they put her out to pasture. If we do not speak out for human rights in China because of commercial interests, we lose all moral authority to speak out about human rights in any place of the world, Pelosi said in a news conference. Like that's ever mattered to us elsewhere. That doesn't serve our interests, right? China has some contradictions, some progress in terms of lifting people up, some horrible things happening in terms of the Uyghurs. In fact, it's been labeled a genocide. Okay, let's unwrap that really quickly. If she's really that concerned about human rights violations in China, why is the United States putting all kinds of sanctions on Apple that does all of its manufacturing, a lot of its manufacturing in China where people are jumping out of factories? Doesn't seem to be an issue to them since Apple and Mac are such a huge company here in the U.S., such a multi-billion-dollar operation.
I just want to interject. So here's another quote from Pelosi. By visiting Taiwan, we honor our commitment to democracy and reaffirm our relationship with democracy and Taiwan.
Yeah.
I think I might have misquoted that a little bit, but that's basically what she said. And
yeah, there was, I should have had the video up that showed, maybe I can pull that up really quick. I'll tell you what, do you have this link up to continue the story while I look for the video of her statement,
yeah.
Word salad? Okay, so I left off in the AP story 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Shane, you pick it up from the 6th paragraph in the Pelosi story.
Sure.
Actually, it's right over here while I look for her word salad statement.
All right. Let me see.
Where she misquoted Benjamin
It's
Franklin.
very important. These politicians have these great. Yes. Politicians have this great way of speaking. They say so little.
It's like a high school student just filling time with gobbledygook while they didn't actually do the research or look at the actual facts to support what it is they're talking about. Jimmy Dore did a funny segment. Let me pull up the Jimmy Dore.
So Pelosi said.
Go ahead.
Sure. Pelosi said that the two big countries, the United States and China, must communicate in areas such as climate and other global issues. It isn't about our visit determining what the U.S.-China relationship is. It's a much bigger and long-term challenge once again. We have to recognize that we have to work together in certain areas. So China announced Friday that it is canceling or suspending dialogue with the United States on a range of issues from climate change to military relations and anti-drug efforts in relation. It announced unspecific sanctions on Pelosi and her family. Such as sanctions are generally mostly symbolic in nature. So they're going to sanction Pelosi. That's interesting.
Big deal.
China, yes, which claims Taiwan has threatened to annex it by force if necessary. China, which claims Taiwan and has threatened to annex it by force if necessary, called Pelosi's visit a provocation, and on Thursday began military drills, including missile striking in 6 zones surrounding Taiwan, which could be the biggest since the 1990s. So I just want to really quickly, before we get to that, I want to read from 2 tweets, and these came from the Chinese press on Twitter. So this is from, so the first one says, China's ambassador, King Jiang, on CNN says, the speaker's visit is a major event upgrading substantive relations between the U.S. and Taiwan and sends a very wrong signal to Taiwan independence separatist forces. He adds, China made its opposition known to all levels of the USG. And then the second tweet says, the People's Liberation Army announced it would conduct live fire exercise in 6 regions surrounding Taiwan Island, a situation that surpassed the 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis. This is not just a demonstration, but an actual exercise to liberate Taiwan. Pelosi's visit is bound to speed up China's unification. So Pelosi has probably caused some problems for Taiwan themselves by visiting.
And I've got a video queued when you want to share that screen from Sagar and Crystal.
Sure, let's go ahead.
Go to that? Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's just I didn't know if you knew that I had the video queued because they pretty much – I like Crystal and Sagar. I know that a lot of people don't. They think that they've become like mainstream media, and it's like I don't think so. I mean, I don't agree with them all the time, but I do think that their coverage is pretty balanced. And I thought that their analysis of this, before we show Jimmy's clip with Nancy's word salad, is worth listening to.
Okay, that's an opening, obviously, to what's happening right now, the major story across the globe, Nancy Pelosi and her visit to Taiwan. Her jet is literally in the air as we speak, a military jet flying over the South Pacific, and she apparently will be escorted by U.S. military planes into Taiwan, along with Taiwan's.
That was at the cost of about, I think I read $90 million in military expenses to get her over there.
Air Defense Force. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen from the Financial Times. Some very significant reporting. They were the first to not only officially confirm that Nancy Pelosi will visit Taiwan, but that she will be meeting with the Taiwanese president on Wednesday. Remember, they're significantly ahead of us in terms of timing, so it's a little bit off in terms of the dates and what we're referring to. Now, this is an extraordinarily significant visit. Just to lay out, Nancy Pelosi is the most senior U.S. official to visit Taiwan in the last 25 years. The last time that a U.S. speaker visited Taiwan was 1997 when Newt Gingrich went over there. Now, a lot has changed in the last 25 years. China has been saying that this is an extraordinarily escalatory move on behalf of the United States, and it's caused a real diplomatic, frankly, problem for the Biden administration. Because really what it is that, let's put this on the screen. After the Pelosi visit was announced, you'll recall shortly before Biden went ahead and got COVID, he was asked on the rope line at the White House, and he said that the military believes it's, quote, not a good idea for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to visit Taiwan at the moment. That also
So naturally, she ignored the advisors.
came, this is in the Financial Times piece, that Jake Sullivan and other senior U.S. military officials, along with the intel community, actually visited Pelosi in order to try and dissuade her from visiting Taiwan, saying, listen, it's a bad time right now. What's happening is that, and I think the audience should know this as well, China is, just because it's an authoritarian country, does not mean they don't have domestic politics. COVID-0 was a nightmare and a disaster for a significant part of the Chinese population. Just like we had lockdown problems, they had lockdown problems. Their economy is also in turmoil. They're having literal riots in the streets over people who are rioting over the fact that they're trying to pay their mortgages, but buildings aren't being built. We talked previously about Evergrande and the Chinese real estate bubble.
Oh, their housing market crashed like 40% in a month.
It's difficult for us to comprehend just how precarious things are right now in China. They also have rolling energy blackouts. Beijing has had significant problems. So
I'm going to jump ahead in the video to where they're talking about the military advisors. Here we go. And the other tweets.
The White House even acknowledged that yesterday. Let's put this up, that Pelosi is coming here. And if this was John Boehner or a GOP speaker, we would hate it, but we would maybe get it. But she's in your party. Right. They refuse to believe that Pelosi is coming here in defiance of President Biden, of the U.S. military. They simply don't believe that such a system could even exist. And actually, the White House even acknowledged that yesterday. Let's put this up there on the screen. John Kirby is
he's speaking about China. They were like, if a representative in our country and our government decided to go against what our leaders said, they'd probably be, we talked about this on the Tuesday Hardlands media show. I said they'd probably be executed. Kit said, or at least thrown out of the party. That's why China's like, how is it that you don't have a leash on your Speaker of the House that is defying, the president and your military advisors' admonitions that this isn't a good idea to spark a diplomatic crisis?
Pentagon spokesperson assuming the podium, saying he, quote, made clear Congress is an independent branch of government and Speaker Pelosi makes her own decisions. That was in a phone call that lasted over 2.5 hours between President Xi and Biden just a couple of days ago. So major diplomatic crisis on our front. And the administration, Crystal, is reiterating over and over again. They're like, listen, and this is an independent branch of government. It's up to Nancy Pelosi. Nothing about our Taiwan policy has changed.
This independent form of branch of government is still supposed to take the direction of the presidency and probably the Pentagon as far as how this could escalate things up there. I mean, I don't think that this is going to escalate a boots on the ground situation as Ukraine with Russia claiming Ukraine as part of their territory. But it's far easier for China, if they choose, to go and invade an island and recapture it in light of the fact that military exercises in the area have escalated than it would be for what we're seeing in Ukraine.
So this is kind of like Kamala Harris. I don't know if you remember a while back, Joe Biden gave a speech about foreign policy. Now, I don't agree, with every, but Kamala Harris wanted to give a speech about foreign policy and her opinions, but she is not the president, whether you agree with the president or whatever, the president is in charge of the foreign policy decisions, not the vice president, not the Speaker of the House, not Mitch McConnell. But I just want to remind everyone, this visit was okay because it was approved by my minority leader, Mitch McConnell. So it's okay.
You just like to make fun of Donald Trump.
Oh, let's put this up here.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to. I was trying to pause it before. So I was trying to mute it so it didn't overlap what you were saying. But yeah, a foreign policy decision is not at the indulgence of the drinker of the House or Congress. That's a presidential and military directive.
So Lana says she needs a leash and a gag.
Yeah. So talking about how we're represented on the world stage, Jimmy shares with us how Nancy addressed the delegation, screwing up the Benjamin Franklin quote about democracy and freedom. Here we go. Love Jimmy.
It's muted.
But now Nancy Pelosi is going to give her a run for the money. You ready for this? Watch this.
Source of the strength is democracy. I said at a meeting earlier with the parliamentarians, in our earliest days of our founding of our country, Benjamin Franklin, our presidency, said, freedom and democracy. Freedom and democracy are one thing, security here. We can't have either if we don't have both.
That is
security, economics, security, economy. Again, they're all, and governance, they're all related, and we want Taiwan to always have freedom with security, and we're not backing away from that. Okay? Thank you.
Whoa. Okay, so what the actual quote is, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety.
That's what she was going for?
Here's what she said. Freedom and democracy, security here. If we don't have, we can't have either. If we don't have both, so security, economic, security, economy, again, they're all, and governance, they're all related.
It makes sense, right?
That really happened.
That's why I call her the drinker of the house. Get me a cocktail. I'm done talking.
You know, and
So
then when
yeah,
you ask-
I mean, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
when you ask her too many hard questions, what she does is she says the room is being cleaned and you need to all leave the room when she's at an event. I actually let me just see something. I want to see if I have that video to pull up. I just want to to see if I still have it. Do I have it? Is this it? Yeah, I think this is it.
Wait a minute, wait, I want a woman, I want a woman, a woman, a woman. Gender equality here. Maybe I don't, let's see.
Abby Martin with the Empire Files. Speaker Pelosi, you just presided over a large increase in the Pentagon budget. This Pentagon budget is already massive. The Pentagon is a larger polluter than 140 countries combined. How can we seriously talk about net zero if there is this bipartisan consensus to constantly expand this large contributor to climate change, which is exempt from these conferences? Military is exempt from climate talks.
Well, I just want to use an example if I can. You know, the sea level rise is an important part of what's happening with the climate. And I am not a defense person, but I've had so many talks with the Defense Department, with the Navy in particular, about how they have to respond to what's going on. So I really do think that there is no reason why what we're putting together, with Build Back Better and other things, can't respond to the Defense Department and have the same impact in terms of reducing emissions. And I do think that the Defense Department is very much aware of the fact that they have to play a major role, both from a strategic as well as, for the good of the world. So I don't see what we're doing in any way, or, increasing the defense budget as being something that's inconsistent with climate action. I really don't.
And may I just add that national security advisors all tell us that the climate crisis is a national security matter. It is, of course, a health matter for our children, the water they drink, the air they breathe, etc. It is a jobs issue between clean technologies being the future of our workforce and the training for all of that. It is a national security issue because of the all of the conditions that climate crisis produces. I won't go into all of them, but they do cause for migration, conflict over habitat and resources, and again, a security challenge globally. And then the fourth, of course, the moral issue that we need to pass on this planet to future generations in a responsible way. Now, recognizing what you said, we recognize that as well. And a big user of fuel. There have been many initiatives over time, more successful with more technology, to convert from fossil fuel to other sources of fuel to run the military, because it would make the biggest difference. Transportation, defense, these are two of the biggest can make the biggest difference in all of that, and that is something we're very, very focused on. As I say, the Defense Department sees this systemically, that we have to stop it as a national security issue, and one way to do that is to stop our dependence on fossil fuels, which exacerbate the climate crisis. With that, I thank you all for being here. Unfortunately, they're telling us they have to clean the room. I didn't know about that.
So she wanted a female journalist to ask a question, just not that female journalist. That's why I referred to the other guy, because I'm sure she knows who Abby Martin is, another great independent muckraker in our independent media ecosystem.
But, they have to clean the room. So they all, I'm sure, you saw that video. Nobody came up and whispered anything into her ear. Nobody said anything. She just said, they're telling us. Are they using mental telepathy?
She's an embarrassment, like Dianne Feinstein, okay? Yeah. I don't want to elder shame, or Joe Biden. Joe Biden is like the prime example of elder abuse. The party grabbed him, knew how much he wanted to be president throughout his whole political career, and realized, hey, let's throw this guy in. He'll do what we want, and we'll have Kamala waiting in the wings, who we really want, because she'll say anything and stand for nothing for when he strokes out to just continue the neoliberal policies of the quote unquote Democratic Party when they're really nothing like what Democrats used to be.
Who babbles better, Biden or Pelosi?
I'm sorry?
Who babbles better, Biden or Pelosi? What do you think?
Oh, dude, that's a tough one. I'd say that they're pretty neck and neck. Turkey neck and neck. Get it? Turkey neck and neck. Not that I have anything to brag about, but.
So we're going to our next story of Alex Jones.
Yeah. Let me clear up my screen here of the other stories.
So this has been going on, I think, for the last couple of years, and we're finally getting to a decision-making process. I mean, this is court cases. They're long, they're grueling, they take a long time, but oh, are you there? Okay.
Yeah, well, I thought that this story was interesting in relation to the fact that they're finally in the sentencing phase. As far as assessing damages. Now, all throughout this, Alex Jones has claimed that he has no money. He's gone broke. Meanwhile, they've discovered from the period that they were assessing his finances, InfoWars has made over $180 million. They were racking in maybe about $200,000 a day when he was doing his broadcasts. So what was also kind of funny about this is that when he was on the stand being cross-examined by the prosecution, and he claimed that he couldn't remember things or have answers, I guess his lawyers inadvertently, accidentally shared text messages with the prosecution that the prosecution wasn't supposed to get their hands on, but they obviously used it to their advantage because they reminded him on the stand they asked him on the stand if he remembers what the definition of perjury is, because they knew he was perjuring himself because they actually had the information that contradicted all of the dodging he was doing on the stand. So let me read from the article. This came yesterday from AP News. No, today from AP News. Now, right now, Alex Jones has been ordered to pay Sandy Hook parents more than $4 million. A Texas jury Thursday. Oh, I'm echoing. I don't know why that is.
Not sure.
Okay, I'll continue. Sounds like it's gone. A Texas jury Thursday ordered conspiracy theorist Alex Jones to pay more than $4 million, significantly less than the $150 million being sought, in compensatory damages to the parents of a 6-year-old boy killed in the Sandy Hook massacre, marking the first time the InfoWars host has been held financially liable for repeatedly claiming the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history was a hoax. The Austin jury must still decide how much the InfoWars host should pay in punitive damages to Neil Heslin and Scarlett Lewis, whose son Jesse Lewis was among the 20 children and 6 educators who were killed in the 2013 attack in Newtown, Connecticut. The parents had sought at least $150 million in compensation for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Jones's attorney asked the jury to limit the damages to $8. $1 for each of the compensation charges they considered. And Jones himself said any award over $2 million would sink us. Tough shit, Alex. I'm all for free speech, but I'm also not for yelling fire in a crowded theater, which is the separation between Alex Jones' sense of what free speech is and what responsible free speech I think should be. And that's not limiting free speech, but we'll get to that in a moment as far as some of my thoughts on unwrapping this. It likely won't be the last judgment against Jones, who was not in the courtroom over his claims that the attack was staged in the interests of increasing gun controls. A Connecticut judge has ruled against him in a similar lawsuit brought by other victims' families and an FBI agent who worked on the case. He also faces another trial in Austin. Jones's lead attorney, Andino Rainell, winked at his co-counsel before leaving the courtroom. He declined to comment on the verdict. Outside the courthouse, the plaintiff's attorney, Mark Bankston, insisted that the $4.11 million amount wasn't a disappointment, noting it was only part of the damages Jones will have to pay. Now, they've dismissed, and they're going to go into, I think they're going to go into, I'm getting a weird echo on this end. Do you have something on over there?
Do I? No.
I don't know why I'm.
Do you?
I don't think so. Let me continue. All right. Well, hopefully I can continue. I'm not hearing any other audio. Oh, you know what it is, Shane? I think here, share my screen instead. Are you sharing my screen or your screen?
This is your screen.
Because I see like there's a little video in the lower right-hand corner that I shut off. All right. Let me continue the article. Okay. So this article was from yesterday. The jury returns Friday, today, to hear more evidence about Jones and his company's finances. In a video posted on his website Thursday night, Jones called the reduced award a major victory. I admitted I was wrong. I admitted it was a mistake. I admitted that I followed disinformation, but not on purpose. I apologized to the families, and the jury understood that. What I did to those families was wrong, but I didn't do it on purpose, he said. Yeah, he did. He did it to make a buck. The award was more money than my company and I personally have, he says, but we're going to work on trying to make restitution on that, Jones said. Bankston suggests, do you like how I'm punctuating our little Fancy Nancy and Alex? All right. So I hope that entertains our audience. The award was more money than okay, so Bankston suggested any victory declarations might be premature. We aren't done, folks, Bankston said. We knew coming into this case it was necessary to shoot for the moon and get the jury to understand we were serious and passionate. After tomorrow, he's going to owe a lot more, and I hope he does. The total amount awarded in this case could set a marker for other lawsuits against Jones and underlines the financial threat he's facing. It also raises new questions about the ability of InfoWars, which has been banned from YouTube, Spotify, and Twitter for hate speech, to continue operating, although the company's finances remain unclear. All right, so let me take a detour into this. By banning InfoWars from YouTube, Spotify, and Twitter for hate speech, I do think that as far as free speech goes, and we can discuss this, Shane, I do think that the line is drawn at hate speech. But I also think that the hate speech has to be defined in civil suits like this, because the moment that these corporate media platforms start defining what hate speech is without an actual legal analysis, they can claim what we're talking about here on your channel is hate speech and ban the channel, on Chicago Corner, on Heartlands Media. There's a responsibility. Again, I think the responsibility to the free speech is, I think that we understand that there's a line between what you can say and then riling things up to incite violence, incite hatred, as he did against these families, suggesting that Sandy Hook was a false flag, which it wasn't, and which the facts supported, by which they were able to prove civilly. What's happened with the cancellation and censorship of Jones or President Donald Trump has basically emboldened corporate-run social media to determine who can say what. For example, can I share this real quick? This is what I'm talking about. Let me pop this in. So I routinely respond to people on Twitter. And recently I saw Rob Reiner post this. He said it before and he'll say it again. Joe Biden has accomplished more in his first 2 years than any president in the last 60. We all need to shout this from the rooftops. To which I responded sarcastically, Rob Reiner, do us all a favor and jump off when you're done shouting it. What did that lead to? An 11-hour Twitter ban. Now, they claim that I was inciting suicide and self-harm. Their AI suggested that. That's how AI read my comment. Now, if Twitter, with its billions of dollars, had live eyes to understand the context of my tweet, they would have seen I was being sarcastic. Now, if Rob Reiner had said, "Hey, to my Twitter audience, I'm feeling depressed. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling very suicidal," then yeah, I can understand that my tweet, which was meant in a different context, could be taken as encouraging suicide or self-harm. It clearly wasn't. All right, so this is the point that I'm trying to make as far as it comes to InfoWars and Trump. Okay, when your platforms can start, their AIs can start, don't have a sense of context to what people are saying, that they can easily then ban whoever they want for whatever amount of time, even though this was not hate speech, what I said, it was a sarcastic comment. I mean, arguably, I guess people would say it was in bad taste. I don't think it was. I mean, I say what I feel. And in Rob Reiner's case here, where he thinks that Joe Biden's done more in the past 60 years, I think that it earned my sarcastic response about what he should do after screaming it from the rooftops, which he's clearly not going to do. Okay. But again, I'm going back to the whole sense of what is hate speech and what should be censored from social media platforms. Should it be left to the legal system? And I think it should, in cases like what happened with Alex Jones and InfoWars, to determine and then assess damages and enforce the damages against somebody like Alex Jones, who certainly did have bad intent in how he decided to use this tragedy to enrich himself by inciting hate, by using defamation and misdirection to enrich what InfoWars was doing. Your thoughts, Shane?
So my thoughts, a couple of things. So one, this is something, and this goes back about 5 years ago, and I haven't heard anybody else call for this. Well, maybe I have, but this is something to first the point about Twitter. So maybe 5 years ago, I can't find the video because, you know, YouTube is a mess, but Kowalski made a video about Twitter and Facebook and etc. and said, hey, something needs to be done about this. These should be, why isn't the First Amendment expanding to Twitter, Facebook, etc., and why aren't these being treated like the public square? Of course, you shouldn't have hate speech and violence, and he was calling for a policy adjustment in government to address this, because our policies are outdated and have not evolved for the technological age. And that was something that I've heard him talk about maybe 5 years ago, but I haven't heard anybody.
And the public square argument is a great way to frame it too, because a public square, we can go and speak freely. We have the internet and social media. So yeah, I think, you know, as much as I don't agree with everything Kyle says, I think that was a fair assessment of the landscape.
Mm-hmm. And I think, and he's like, if you're going to ban somebody, there has to be cause, and it has to be treated in such a way where, hey, there's going to be a public hearing or something to that effect. There's going to be a procedure. You can't just say you're banned. You can suspend, and then there's going to be a procedure, and you should be given the right to defend yourself on why you should not be banned. And, you know, and of course, no violence, you know, that's his, but with Alex Jones, yes. I don't know whether he should have been banned. Yeah, I mean, yes, he did advocate for violence, and maybe he could have been banned on that, but the way he was banned was the issue.
Yeah, exactly. Because look at how many years it's taken for us to finally see the truth of, you know, even the law analyzes and says, yeah, this was hateful. It was defamation. Free speech, and this is you know, similarly what Amber Heard is screaming about. She claims her rights to free speech were violated. Well, no, they weren't. Not when you're lying about Johnny Depp. Free speech does not allow you to lie and defame and cause harm to other parties. Free speech relies on you using facts, and free speech doesn't go into you think your free speech allows you an opinion. If your free speech allows you an opinion that doesn't harm other people, fair game. When it does, that's where the line is drawn. And that's where the laws and the legalities and the policies on social media do have to be re-examined and reformed. And in the situation with social media with Trump and Alex Jones, those parameters hadn't been established yet, because now they can decide to censor or have their AI just arbitrarily strike anybody that might say something that the context is lost. I didn't say anything hateful or defamatory to Rob Reiner, but because they don't have policies in place to really disseminate what somebody's saying if it violates a rule or policy, to protect what free speech or opinion is about, that's where we have a problem.
So I want to get your opinion on something regarding this. So I went in and talked to one of my more conservative friends about this issue last night, and I brought it up, and they said, well, this is the same thing. So in the context, Alex Jones's followers doxed the family from Sandy Hook and continued to follow them from apartment to apartment. They compared this to, they said, how can Alex Jones be responsible for his followers. I just want to see what you know.
Because he incited them. His misinformation, his lies caused harm to those families with these crazy people chasing them around, suggesting that they were bad faith actors in a false flag incident, which it wasn't.
The second part of it, he said, it's the same thing, and I disagree with him here. He said, it's the same thing. He said, Bernie Sanders has mean supporters on Twitter. So if you can say Alex Jones is responsible for this, you have to say that Bernie is responsible for his mean followers on Twitter, and I don't think that's the case.
For their mean tweets on a social media platform. Well, your conservative friends are clearly out of their mind, Shane. Sorry to say that, but no, there's a difference between people hounding people in public, where they live, where they go, and somebody deciding that they're going to troll any public figures. I mean, anything that Bernie Sanders shared that was factual on social media that his followers threw in the faces of neoliberals or Republicans who are routinely lying about things on social media. It's when you've got the truth on your side, it's a different thing.
It's not harmful at all.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It might hurt their feelings, but it's not going to hurt them physically.
Yeah. Who are the real snowflakes? The Republican conservatives. They're the ones who scream the loudest while they support assholes like Alex Jones.
Absolutely. So we're going to quickly run through story 3 and then get into our debate. So we're going to try to go quickly into story 3. So Starbucks employees have been trying to unionize. I believe some stores have been successful, but not all of them. Now, Starbucks has hired can we see this on screen or no?
I thought you had your stories on your side, but let me quickly, I can get it. I'm going into I had a sense you might not have had it up. That's what she said.
Okay,
you have it? Jump it up on my side?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, you got it. Okay.
So this is an interesting one. We're going to take 5 minutes and do this one, quick as possible. Starbucks hired a former CIA agent in the middle of union busting campaign. They are really intent on, this
of course they
anti-union thing. So Starbucks has hired former CIA department officer and Pinkerton Detective Agency worker as the manager of the global intelligence for retail operations.
Pinkerton Detective Agency. The Pinkertons were busting unions and workers back in the we've completely gone back to the 1930s and 1920s when unions were starting. Well, 1930s actually, 1930s and 40s when the labor movement started. But even before then, the Pinkertons were used for bad faith actions by the elites and rich in society. So nothing's changed.
So here, I just want to read this. Manager of the global intelligence for retail operations. They have their own CIA. For retail operations.
I didn't know the Pinkertons even still existed. This is hilarious.
Well, no, he formerly worked for the Pinkertons.
Oh, okay.
So right now, he's been hired by Starbucks this is their new organization. Starbucks has, I don't know if it's new, but Starbucks has this thing. It's called the Global Intelligence for Retail Operations. Their own CIA.
If this doesn't show how corporatism runs everything in this country, I don't know what does. It's not the United States of America, it's the corporate states of America, because these assholes at these corporations who have the money to pay lobbyists to influence all of our elected representatives, not leaders, have all the control, not us. This is not a representative democracy. It's only representative for the corporations that have got the big money to hire intelligence operations internally to bust unions and prevent people from making a fair living wage.
So, according to her LinkedIn profile, Amanda Stanfield was recruited by the coffee giant in March as it was carrying out an aggressive union busting campaign in its stores. She lists the CIA, Pinkerton, and the U.S. State Department among her previous employers, and states cross-functional intelligence collection efforts among her responsibilities. So she's in charge of cross-functional intelligence collection efforts for a Starbucks CIA.
Yeah, and it gets a historical context in the next paragraph. That was mentioning. It's great.
So around 200 stores have won. Union with the National has found violation of the law.
But you missed the paragraph. Pinkerton has a long history of union busting since it was founded in Chicago in 1850, including spying and carrying out violent attacks on behalf of bosses. That's who she worked for. That's why they've hired her.
To run their little CIA. You know, they're playing country with little stores or their little states, and they got their little agency. It's really disgusting, actually. But they're losing. 200 stores have won union recognition since December. And as of last year, the Regular found that a trade unionist who led strikes in an Amazon store was illegally interrogated by a former FBI agent as a manager. They're interrogating people.
Where, you know, I've said this on so many live streams, having grown up in the 70s before the 80s hit us. In high school history classes, civil rights, progress, movement forward, equality, equity. When I was growing up, I saw a turn in this country in the mid-70s, late 70s, and then Ronald Reagan took office in the 80s, and everything started getting pulled back to where we are now.
So here's something from Lana. She asked,
yeah, I love her comments.
Seeing the movie Norma Ray. True story. Highly recommend to see some of the nasty tactics owners and management uses to union bust.
This is reflective of that. I haven't seen Norma Ray, but I will take a look at it on your recommendation, Lana.
Me too. Okay, so we have one more story, and this is our little debate. But let's read the story first. This is from Pixie. Is this from Pix 11? I think this is from Pix 11. 11 is
Have you got that story up?
Yes, Pix 11. This is New York, my old hometown. Do we have it up? No.
I don't have it up on this side. I can in a moment. Just give me a second. I can copy the link. You have it?
It's not loading.
Okay.
Is it working?
Yeah, it's there.
Is it there? Okay.
Yeah.
Jersey school districts mandate clear backpack. Now, I've done the story for the last 3 news shows that I've been a part of. I did stories about backpacks, and we went to Texas, which they're doing this there now. But let's go to New Jersey. So I'm New Jersey, which is why. Look at the story. This is a new protocol requiring every student to have a transparent bag in the coming academic year. South River High School students have been using clear backpacks since 2019, but now the policy has been extended to all grades to improve security measures. We understand our youngest children do not intend harm, but this procedure protects them from innocently bringing harmful items to school. So I'm going to let you get your point off, and then I'm going to get mine, and then we'll have a little debate. But that's just the basics. There's nothing really more.
Well, as you shared this with me last night as we were going over ideas for the show or stories for the show, I immediately responded before you shared your opinion, which is where we discovered that we had a bit of a disagreement. Personally, I've read stories of students going into schools with knives and other weapons, and I don't think that this is a bad idea, because if a student doesn't have anything to hide, they shouldn't be worried about the clear backpacks. I mean, a lot of schools now have metal detectors, and if they can quickly see what's in a student's clear bag to make sure that they're not bringing weapons in, and I'm not even thinking about guns. I'm thinking about, knives and other weapons that are not actually, handguns or weapons of that nature. Now, you had brought up, well, what about women or young ladies who have feminine hygiene products in their bags, which they could be embarrassed by? And I'm like, why in this day and age is anybody embarrassed by anybody having a feminine hygiene product in their bags? That's a routine health thing. Nobody should be embarrassed about it. I mean, because, we're so repressed and uptight as a society about sex, or the fact that, a feminine hygiene product has to do with a woman's genitals. What's the big deal? Are we not all grown ups? I mean, that I think has more to do with speaking to the very puritanical, aspect of our society, that looks at anything that might relate to reproductive issues. So, yeah, I can understand some teenagers might be embarrassed about that, but it's like, why? Maybe we should start saying you shouldn't be embarrassed about that, to worry about it being seen in a clear bag, than the larger issue of hopefully trying to weed out gang members who are bringing knives into schools that where they might not have the metal detectors. School security is really heightened now. And, you mentioned that most school shooters are not students. Well, I was like, the Columbine kids were students. So
Yes,
I don't have as
but
much of a problem with the clear backpacks, but that's my stance on it. Yeah, it's a little bit invasive, but in light of trying to weed out kids with bad intentions going into schools, especially in areas where it might be a problem with gangs, I don't know. This doesn't bother me as much as I sense that it bothers you for your reasons. So you go ahead and share.
So a couple of things. So one, if a school has a metal detector and I have a weapon in my bag, why is the metal detector not going to detect it? Am I going to be throwing the weapon under the metal detector?
But not all schools have metal. But not all schools have metal detectors, though. That's yeah.
Well, that's a different conversation. If the school has a metal detector,
Okay.
I don't think I need a clear bag because I'm not able to get through. The other thing is some schools have ridiculous medical policies. So when I was in elementary school, my school had a medical policy. If you had an inhaler, you were not allowed to carry it with you. Now,
Really, what was the reason for that?
They believe that the nurse, a medical professional, should be responsible, and a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old would not know how to use an inhaler. So my friends who had inhalers would carry it in their backpacks and hide it from school officials. And if they needed it because they had really bad asthma, they would use it. So this is something, from the student's perspective, a lot of people wouldn't think of this from the adult, the outside perspective. But I'm not going to tell anybody when I graduated, but I wasn't a student too long ago. And if my school had said, my high school had said, we're implementing clear backpacks, me and all of my friends would have literally led a protest and not brought any backpacks to school ever and not brought any items. We were like, oh, where are your books? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want you to see them. So I didn't bring them with me. We would have done that. I was kind of a little bit of a rebel in high school. A lot of student rebellion were started by me.
I think in context of like an inhaler that a parent allows you to bring to school, that's a policy that has to be reevaluated. Let me say this also. In regards to if a school doesn't have a metal detector, if they had a metal detector and a bag sparks off the metal detector, that means they've got to go through the bag, and it could be a metal pen. It could be something that's not a weapon. So a metal detector can still give you a false positive to metal in the bag, as opposed to if it's a clear bag, they can instantly see what's in there. Let me also say this: drug paraphernalia or pot being brought into schools for selling to kids is not going to set off a metal detector. So, a clear bag is also going to show if a student's trying to bring drugs into school to distribute. That's the other thing. So that's why I think like the idea of a clear bag where you can quickly see what's in there to pass kids through and instantly see, wow, is there, I don't know, like a baggie with weed in it? Is there a knife? Is there a gun? And if they saw an inhaler, Shane, I don't know what policies are now, but an inhaler shouldn't be an issue. If a kid's got an inhaler and a parent has told the school nurse, hey, this is their RX for the inhaler, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Now, yes, but the other issue is there should be a level of trust between teachers and students. Now, of course, you're not always going to have that. There are certain students who need to botch, whatever. But in my high school, we were all, at least in the class that I was in, we were all treated like adults. There were policies in the school that our homeroom teacher did not make us follow. Like, for example, we were supposed to lock up our cell phones. He's like, oh, keep your cell phone. We were supposed to do whatever. Our teacher, gave us a level of trust. And because he did that, we had a level of trust with him, and we would come to him with all of our issues, and he would be reasonable about them because he created this level of trust with his students. And I feel like that's, an important connection that's being lost in this, because if I had to bring clear backpack, I'd feel like, well, I guess they don't trust me.
Well, would you and your fellow students have ratted on kids who are bringing drugs into school to distribute, or who you might think have knives or other weapons that might not be guns, that really do endanger the safety of the student population?
So actually, yes. So there was
That's
a
my
student
counter.
who brought in a taser, and I wasn't the one who said anything, but somebody did say something. Hey, this student has a taser. And then it was looked to, but it was only with that teacher. Nobody went to the administration. Nobody went to, in that classroom with that teacher, the level of trust that he had created with us. There's a rapport where we were okay doing that. But only with the teachers who established that level of trust. Any teacher who treated in the classrooms where teachers treated the kids like kids, the 16 and 17-year-olds like kids, there was no level of trust, and they didn't tell them anything. And that was just an important distinction I'm trying, it's also environment. If you create a certain environment and there's a certain level of trust between teacher and student, you may have that.
But you may not have that everywhere. That's why I don't think that the clear backpack is as, I don't know, infringing on my rights that I would need to worry about. I mean, trust with the student administration, as opposed to, not everybody knows who might be dangerous, Shane. Whereas in your case, yeah, I understand that you guys were willing to to talk to school administrators about students that might be dangerous, but do you know all the dangerous students? I just don't.
We had
okay, go. But again, that's your specific case. That's not that way everywhere, which is why I'm getting to the heart of how do you weed out students that are going to bring in drugs to distribute or weapons to use. That a metal detector would still force everybody to unload their bags if it triggered them. And if they don't have a metal detector, it's easier to see what a student might be bringing into school, to try to tell a student, hey, you better think twice before you try to bring a metal weapon into school or drugs to distribute, because, it's easier to catch that stuff, which is illicit criminal activity. So I don't know. I don't think students should be as insulted at the fact that they're not being trusted, as opposed to, hey, the school's trying to watch out for us and catch the bad apples that all of us might not be aware of. And
now here's the other question. Should this be a blanket policy, or should schools, based on their individual needs, be able to put this into place for if they have specific issues, whether it be on a temporary or permanent basis? Because like I said, my school environment was much different than the environment of a much bigger public school. We only had a couple hundred students. Everybody in the school knew everybody. All the teachers knew all the students. All the administrators knew everybody knew everybody. So we had a different kind of environment and probably wouldn't have needed such a policy. Do you think it should be left up to the individual schools based on their communities rather than the school districts as a whole? That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a fair compromise, to have the parents in that community and those student councils, not student councils, I'm sorry, school board meetings, dictate what they feel the policy should be based on the needs or the what's the word I'm looking for? Assessments within those communities. I think that that's a fair compromise.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There was a school in New York that I used to pass by. It was in my grandmother's neighborhood. There's gang violence everywhere, Flushing, Queens. There's a lot of stuff down there, and there were gang. That school had always fights every day. That school may have benefited from a clear backpack policy. Now, the school across the street from ours, there was literally a school right across the street from ours, might have actually benefited from that policy. I don't know, but our school would have been fine, without it. It could be taken on a school basis, and policies don't necessarily have to be permanent. They could be renewed every certain amount of time. So let's say, hey, for this year, we're going to do the clear backpacks, and we're going to assess the community next year to see if this is still something that makes sense for us.
Yeah.
Just it doesn't have to be. My issue with policies like this is it becomes a blanket policy, and it ends up hurting certain relationships and certain things in certain areas where it's not necessary.
Yeah, no, I think
bigger issue.
Yeah, no, that's fair too.
So we have another quote from Lana before we went about unions. I just realized that about the time unions in the US were at their height, companies started using overseas cheap labor. It is all related. Hashtag Powell memo. Hashtag neoliberal. It's all about the market.
Yeah.
Look at that. We had a debate and we didn't try to rip each other's heads off.
No, there's no reason to. I mean, you've got fair concerns. I lean more on the side of being safe. You know, I was this way during the pandemic. I had no problem getting vaccinated and wearing a mask, but I understood why others might have issues with it. And now my position or my viewpoint has changed a little in light of the fact that we've discovered our government lied to us about vaccinations actually preventing the spread. But I'll still wear a mask around other people who are immunocompromised so that they feel safe out of respect for them. I think an ounce of prevention is worth the pound of cure as far as erring on the side of caution in all situations. And I think that this issue with the school backpacks is erring on the side of caution in a way that really doesn't cause injury or damage to anybody. It's going to keep them safer, and I don't really think it infringes on their rights. Rights to privacy. There are rules in schools. You're not supposed to bring in weapons. You're not supposed to bring in drugs. So if that, if you feel your right to privacy is being infringed upon, unfortunately, there are others that don't follow the rules that that they're trying to protect you from, kids, in these situations. So that's why I feel like erring on the side of caution is a little bit wiser. But it's my opinion. So
definitely. But you see, we're able to have this discussion. A lot of people will realize, when they don't have, a lot of people, when they have disagreements, will not have a discussion about it and realize, oh, well, there is some middle ground here that we can work and agree on. See, we found some middle ground when we were discussing this.
Yeah.
Which,
it's not tribal. It's all, look, I base my assessment of this story on logic, facts, positive outcomes versus negative outcomes. I think the negative outcomes related to not allowing the transparent backpacks are a proliferation of more, I'm not saying they're the majority, but a proliferation of more kids who are not going to follow the rules that might have bad intentions that could endanger other students. That's where I'm coming from on it.
Absolutely.
And I'm not even a parent, but I do have nephews and a niece that I would worry about,
Definitely. So, that was a good show, good debate. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. Do you have anything else?
I wanted to share really quickly for those who don't know what I do. Can you bring up my screen real quick? I just revamped my website at www.nightstar.com. I'm also an independent producer, filmmaker. I'm very, very proud of having revamped my website. If anybody wants to go visit it and see all the fun stuff that I do as a independent film producer, media producer, with a really nice sizzle reel I just threw together to showcase some of the work that I've done, you can visit www.nightstar.com, where you can click on the projects and clients and basically cycle through all the stuff I've done throughout the years. So I live in Chicago. I'm a media producer, director, editor, filmmaker, writer. Any of our viewers in Chicago or who might need a stringer crew here in Chicago for stuff being produced in other states that needs Chicago content, check it out. www.nightstar.com.
So everybody looking at NITE, not NIGHT.
NIT, and you can also find me, except for tonight, regularly on Chicago Corner on YouTube. Tuesdays I co-host with Kira McCown, and Fridays I usually host the show with Ed Heller. Unfortunately, I'm not going live tonight because I have tickets to Joe Rogan at the Chicago Theater, which I'm going to be enjoying. But we will be back broadcasting our live streams on Chicago Corner Tuesday and Friday next week.
Okay. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. You can, if you want to chime in. This is something new we're trying at Kerberos. If you want to chime in on the backpack conversation or anything else, or with the backpack conversation, tweet at Kerberos News with the hashtag Clear Backpack, and you can give us your opinions. about the backpack thing, and we will look at them. And you can tag if you want me to see what you've said. You know, you can tag me at Shane MCOUGHLIN. If you want to tag Jerry, do you want to give out so people could tag you on that?
Sure. You can tag. You mean my Twitter handle?
Yeah.
Oh, it's right there. At nightstar.pro on the screen.
Oh, I
there.
didn't see that. Okay. Yeah,
That's where people can reach me on social media easiest. On nightstar.pro, that's my Twitter handle.
Shane put up a questionnaire. Okay. Lana, I will put up a questionnaire on Twitter for this. Okay.
Thanks for the time, Shane. Thanks for viewing, everyone, especially Lana. We will see you soon.
Okay. Bye, everyone.